The glow made her look soft around the edges. A kid, still. Even though she was starting to speak with adult timing and those weird phrases like, "That's a red flag," and "ratio." So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. I always love seeing that. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let me take you into the heart of it all. She called me her favorite boomer, even though I'm Gen X. I'm 48 now, my name's Neil, and I work in IT security, mostly fixing passwords people shouldn't be using in the first place. I've been divorced for about 7 years. Talia lives with me during the week, her mom on weekends. We make it work. Or, at least we did. That TikTok, it got 18,000 views. Talia danced, and I flailed, and we laughed. And someone commented, "Dad has NPC energy," which she read out loud between wheezes of laughter. It was the first time in months I didn't feel like a man who just drove carpools and read terms of service agreements. I felt part of something, her world. Even if I didn't understand the slang or the filters or why someone named Charlie D'Amelio was apparently royalty. I didn't know then that I'd start to lose her a little bit each time she opened that app without asking me to join. I didn't know that the language we shared, goofy dances and inside jokes, would slowly shrink down to polite nods and monosyllables. I just knew that I liked seeing her happy. There was a moment, right after we finished filming that dance, where she reached out to fix my collar. Quiet, sweet thing. And I remember freezing in place, not because of the collar, but because that's the kind of gesture my own dad never gave. And for a second, I thought maybe I was doing okay. Maybe I was the kind of dad she could reach for without hesitation. But time has a weird way of editing your memories, like she did her TikToks, cutting out the boring parts, slowing down the good ones, skipping over anything that might make someone click away. And as much as I loved being fun dad online, I think part of me already knew the moment wouldn't last. Yeah, because even while we were filming, she was glancing off screen every few seconds, checking comments, messages, likes. She was there, but already fading into the glow of her screen. And I didn't say anything. I just flapped my arms again and made another stupid face. She laughed. And then she walked away to edit it, alone, in her room. I stayed in the living room a while longer, the ring light still glowing, casting a halo on an empty space. I remember the smell of the cereal cinnamon and dust and the soft scuff marks on the floor from where we danced. Dancing on laminate floors. Hey guys, tonight I want to tell you something that's been sitting in my chest for years. It starts with laminate floors and a phone propped against a half-empty box of cereal. My daughter, Talia, 15 at the time, had dragged me into the living room wearing mismatched socks and a sweatshirt that said, "Main Character." I was in my pajama pants and a t-shirt that had survived 3 elections and 1 accidental bleach load. The song was some pop remix of a remix. I kept calling it Tic Tac, and she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might stay that way forever. The dance wasn't even a dance. It was more like flapping your arms and spinning, then freezing mid-shuffle like a confused chicken. But she laughed every time I messed it up. And I messed it up on purpose, more than once, just to hear that laugh again. The light from the kitchen was too bright, so she dimmed it and lit up a $10 ring light she bought with babysitting money. Little lip syncs with captions like, "POV, you finally say what you've been holding in," or "Some people will never understand unless they lose you first." I thought it was all part of the act. I told myself, it's just a character. It's performance. Neil, don't be the dad who reads into everything like it's Shakespeare. But I'm also the guy who once overanalyzed the tone of a client's thank you email for 20 minutes. So, yeah, I read into it, I started noticing how the smile she used in those videos didn't reach her eyes. Not always. Sometimes it did when she was dancing with friends, or goofing off in the background, but sometimes it looked like she was smiling at someone who wasn't there. One morning, I brought her a bagel with cream cheese, and she mumbled thanks without looking up from her phone. I hovered. Hovering, by the way, is the universal dad move when we don't know how to ask what's wrong. I said, "That's a lot of edits, huh?" She just nodded. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just fixing a clip." I stood there like a sad houseplant. She had this habit when she was little. Every time she lied, she'd fiddle with the hem of her sleeve. Tug, tug, tug. That morning, she was tugging like the thing owed her money. I almost said something, but then I remembered how fragile it all was. How easily she could roll her eyes and disappear back behind a screen. So instead, I just made a dumb joke. You know, when I was your age, we had to walk 10 miles in the snow to edit your TikToks. "Yeah, I know," she interrupted. She smirked, a real one, for 2 seconds. That's the kind of joke I'd make just to crack her shell. I collected those smirks like tokens, convincing myself they meant everything was still okay. That week, she posted a video where she was crying, not bawling, just a single tear, and a slow zoom into her face with a caption, "Read the signs. They're always there." It got 40,000 likes. I stared at it longer than I should have. I didn't ask her about it. I told myself it was art, that teenagers are dramatic, that maybe it was a trend. But I think what really stopped me was this: I didn't want her to say something I couldn't fix, because then it wouldn't be about glitter and dance moves anymore. Then I'd have to show up as more than just the fun dad. And what if I got it wrong? What if she told me something real and I mishandled it? So I let the moment pass. I commented as always, and she hearted it. That little red heart. I clung to it like it was proof that she still wanted me there. Proof that she hadn't pulled away completely. But that's the thing with social media affection. It's like licking a spoon instead of eating dinner. Feels like something, isn't. The next day, she posted again. This time, no captions. Just her staring into the camera, blinking. Music playing low in the background. A soundbite saying, "And you didn't even notice." I noticed. I just didn't ask. That night, I stood outside her bedroom for a few seconds too long. I could hear the faint TikTok audio. Could picture her scrolling. I thought about knocking. I didn't. I told myself she needed space. I told myself she'd tell me when she was ready. I went back to the kitchen and cleaned the counter, even though it wasn't dirty. I think we both started editing our lives around each other, cutting awkward parts, skipping over the heavy stuff, adding music to mask the silence. The irony, I'm the one who taught her video editing when she was 12. I showed her how to trim clips, fade in audio, add text overlays. Now, she's using those same tools to build a version of herself I can't quite access. Sometimes I wonder if she's editing me out, one filter at a time. The week ended without a single video featuring me. Then the next week. Then the one after that, I told myself. She's just busy, growing up, normal teen stuff. I remember thinking, this is a good thing, right? This is connection, right? I didn't know. Not really. But I let her go into that room without asking to follow. And if I'm being honest, that might have been the first silence I gifted her. Not the angry kind, not a slammed door kind, just the kind where I said nothing, when maybe I should have. Edits and edges. It didn't happen all at once. You don't notice a slow fade when it's happening. It's only when you try to rewind that you see the scenes don't line up the same anymore. A few weeks after our dance video went mini viral, as Talia called it, she started spending more time editing her content, not filming with me, not dragging me into goofy trends, just editing alone. Headphones in, door half closed. Always half closed, never fully shut. Just enough to make me hesitate. She'd post 2 or 3 times a week, dance videos, makeup tutorials. But I kept checking her profile anyway, like some sad, algorithmic stalker. Kept waiting for the notification that never came. One afternoon, she came downstairs in a hoodie 3 sizes too big. I asked if she was cold, and she said no, just comfy. She looked small in that sweatshirt, small and quiet. And all I said was, cool. Because what do you say when you can feel your own kid retreating, but you're too scared to call her back? The DMs I shouldn't have read. It started with a notification, not hers, mine. She'd logged into TikTok on my phone a few months ago to show me how to boost engagement. I don't think I've ever said a sentence that made me sound older, but there it is. I never logged out. Never thought to. So one day, while I was killing time in line at the pharmacy, a little ping popped up, a message from someone named Bling Ink Page. I wish I could say I closed it right away, that I respected her privacy, that I remembered how I used to yell at my own dad for reading my diary when I was 16 and dramatic about everything, including breathing. But I didn't. I tapped. The message was short. You don't deserve that. No context, no thread, just that line sitting there like it was burned into the screen. My stomach did a strange little somersault, not the fun kind. I swiped up, saw earlier messages. Someone named Callie profile picture was a close-up of glitter nails and a smirk. I kept scrolling, telling myself I was protecting her, that I was making sure she was safe, that I wasn't just being nosy, but I was. The messages weren't explicit, no real smoking gun, but the tone, it was sharp, blamey, cutting. Callie, why do you even bother? You know he doesn't see you. Talia, I don't know. It's easier to smile for videos than explain it all. Callie again. He just wants the fun version of you, the cute sidekick in his middle-aged sitcom. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. I think part of me wanted to throw the phone across the room, not because of what she said, but because she wasn't wrong. It hit me that maybe I had been playing the sitcom dad, the one who swoops in for the jokes, throws glitter, and then exits before the plot thickens. I closed the app. My hand was shaking. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask who Callie was or what they meant. I wish I had. Instead, I went home, set the phone down on the counter like it might explode, and stared out the window for a long time. She came in a few minutes later, earbuds in, hoodie up. I looked at her and wanted to say something, anything. Instead, I asked if she wanted Thai food for dinner. She nodded without removing a single earbud. We sat in silence while the rice steamed between us. She scrolled. I chewed. I've never hated the sound of chopsticks tapping a plastic container more in my life. Later that night, I lay in bed and tried to forget the words, "He just wants the fun version of you." And I couldn't, because I think she was right. I had wanted that version. The giggling partner, the TikTok buddy, the sparkly sidekick who made me feel young and relevant and not so divorced. I didn't want the version who pulled away, or stayed quiet, or cried on camera when I wasn't around. I didn't want to face the idea that I was the problem, so I didn't. I buried it, made myself a cup of sleepy time tea, and pretended I hadn't read anything at all. The next morning, she had a new video up, a quiet one, no music, just her staring into the camera while words appeared on the screen one at a time. When you're loud, they laugh. When you're quiet, they ask what's wrong. When you try to explain, they scroll past. It ended with her blowing out a candle. I watched it 4 times before I realized I was crying. Not big sobs, just that quiet kind of ache that sneaks up behind your ribs and settles there, like it's unpacking boxes. I didn't like who I saw in her words. I didn't recognize the version of me she was talking about, but I also couldn't deny it. I wanted to call my sister, ask for advice. But how do you explain to your sibling that your daughter sees you as a ghost in her own house instead? I did what I always do when I don't know how to fix something. I got practical. I Googled how to talk to your teenager about emotions. Yes, really. The advice was bland. Stuff like create a safe space and listen without solving. Okay, sure. Let me just press my magic dad button and suddenly undo years of well-meaning avoidance. I closed the laptop. I walked to her door. I raised my hand and I knocked. Once, twice. She didn't answer. I told myself she had music on, that she was tired, that it wasn't the right moment. And maybe all that was true. But I also knew, deep down, that if I pushed, I'd have to own the part I played in all this. So I walked away. Talia didn't know I'd seen the messages. She still doesn't. And maybe that's the worst part of all, that I learned what she was really feeling and still said nothing. Passive disapproval, active silence. After that night, something shifted, not in a dramatic fireworks and fighting kind of way, just quieter. You know when you walk into a room and you know someone was just talking about you? Even if the air smells like toast and there's nothing but morning cartoons playing, that kind of silence. It's not loud, but it's thick, has a shape. That's what home felt like after I read her messages. She didn't do anything wrong. She wasn't even acting different, not really. But now, every time she laughed, I wondered if it was for me or for the screen. Every time she shut her door, I imagined another message being typed, another line like, "He doesn't see you." I couldn't unhear it. So I started doing what I've always done when I don't know what to do. I got quiet. I folded towels, took longer showers, started unloading the dishwasher in the early mornings instead of the evenings when we'd normally talk. I told myself I was giving her space. But let's be real. What I was actually doing was hiding, avoiding. And she noticed. I think the first time I really felt the break was over breakfast. We were both in the kitchen, me making eggs, her grabbing cold pizza out of the fridge, and she said something funny. Not wildly hilarious, just one of those dry, under-her-breath observations that used to send me into a fit of giggles. This time, I smiled and said nothing. Not because it wasn't funny, but because suddenly I was so hyper-aware of how much I hadn't said lately, how much I wasn't asking, and I didn't want to pretend everything was normal, which is dumb, because pretending is exactly what we were both doing. She looked at me for a second, like she was waiting for a punchline, or maybe a dad joke riff, when I didn't give her one. She nodded, or sorry, almost imperceptibly, and walked out with her pizza. I stood there, flipping eggs I didn't even want to eat. That's the thing about passive disapproval. It doesn't sound like shouting. It's made of glances, missed moments, overly polite goodnights. It's pretending you didn't hear the door slam. It's a heavy pause before saying love you too. And I was full of it. I told myself I didn't want to make her feel judged, that I didn't want to smother her. But the truth, I was angry. Not at her, at myself. At all the moments I'd been the cool dad instead of the real one. Like when she made that video with the makeup tutorial at 2 a.m. And I high-fived her for going viral, but never asked why she was still up. Eyes puffy, wearing foundation like armor. Or the day she came home quiet after school, and I handed her a soda instead of asking what happened. I thought I was giving her space to be herself. What I gave her was silence. And silence, no matter how well-meaning, can sound like shame if you're already hurting. The real kicker, she started mirroring me. Less laughter, more closed doors. She ate in her room. Stopped asking me to film with her. The house got quieter in a way that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like waiting, like a breath held too long. One evening, she walked through the living room wearing a hoodie that said, "Mute." Just that, which are white letters, black background. I couldn't tell if it was irony or a message, or both. I almost said something. I even opened my mouth. But my phone buzzed. Work email. I looked down. By the time I looked up, She was gone. I told myself I'd try again tomorrow. The thing about tomorrows, they pile up until one day you look around and realize you've used them all on laundry and tiredness and pride. There was a weekend where I suggested we go get burgers, just the two of us. Old tradition. We used to go every few Saturdays when her mom still lived here, just for dad time. She said sure, but then she forgot. Or maybe pretended to. When I reminded her, she winced, said she already had plans. Didn't offer to reschedule. I said, no problem, like I didn't feel it. Then I ordered takeout, ate it in the car, listened to a podcast I didn't absorb a single word of. Later that night, I scrolled through my own TikTok feed, a sea of dogs and sweaters, dance challenges I couldn't name, and a sponsored ad for cholesterol medication, which felt aggressively targeted. And then there she was, Talia, a repost of an older video, one where we're both wearing matching wigs and fake British accents, pretending to argue over who took the last cookie. She edited it with bloopers, laughter, my terrible accent, her collapsing on the couch in hysterics. I watched it 3 times. In that moment, I could see what we had and what I'd lost. The caption said, back when I didn't have to filter myself. That line hit me like a sledgehammer made of glitter and guilt. I stared at it for so long, my phone went dim. And still, I said nothing. Not even a text, just silence. Again, ghost in the algorithm. A strange thing happens when you avoid someone long enough, they learn how to live around your absence. At first, I thought Talia was just busy. Finals, friends, whatever. Teenagers shed and molt out of faces like snakes through skin. I figured I was just the latest phase to flake off. And that's normal, right? But then it got weird. She didn't just stop asking me to film stuff. She stopped tagging me in the old videos. Even the ones where I was already in them cropped, blurred, muted. You know it's bad when your own face becomes a background character in your kid's digital scrapbook. I started getting less and less of her content in my feed. TikTok thought I didn't care anymore. The algorithm adjusted like it was taking her side polite, efficient, merciless. It offered me woodworking hacks, dad joke compilations, and 40-year-olds falling off paddleboards. No Talia. It's funny, really? You raise a kid, brush her teeth, teach her how to spell Wednesday, survive lice twice, and suddenly your only view of her is through other people's windows, her friends' reposts, her classmates' tagged clips, all surface, no entry, once. She did a dance challenge at the park I used to take her to. Right in front of that weird metal dinosaur thing, she used to cry over because it was too spiky. She looked beautiful, confident, like someone I would have loved to know if I didn't already feel like I was losing her. The worst part, she looked happier. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's good. Right? That she's blooming. Even without me hovering, but it didn't feel like a healthy stretch into independence. It felt like a deliberate redirection, like she'd rebranded her life to be fatherless by design. And honestly, I didn't blame her. I'd gone quiet when she needed noise. I went to knock on her door one night, one of those aimless midnight walks you do when you've sat with regret long enough that it starts talking louder than your pride. I stood there, hand half raised, listening to whatever soft music was playing through her door. Some kind of lo-fi beat, punctuated by keyboard taps and the occasional giggle. I pictured her texting someone, headphones in, blanket over her lap, the glow of her screen reflecting in her eyes, living a whole universe just 2 inches of drywall away. And I turned around. I brushed my teeth, went to bed, had a dream about a dog I never owned. I wish I could say I finally snapped out of it. That I charged in, apologized, and cracked open the great silence between us with some grand dad speech. But the truth is, I kept waiting for a sign, some clear invitation. She never gave one. Instead, she gave space, more and more space. until even the walls stopped echoing. One morning, I made pancakes. Not because it was a special day, just because banana ones, her favorite. I even shaped one like a heart, which sounds sweet, but came out looking more like a kidney. Still, I tried. I texted her, "Hey, made pancakes." She replied, "Cool." Didn't come out. Didn't ask for any. I sat at the table alone and ate 2 of them. Heart-shaped one included. Too sweet. Not enough salt. But edible. Like most of my parenting. There's a ghost version of me that lives in her digital past. He's fun. He wears wigs. He once shaved his beard into a lightning bolt for a bet. He sings badly and never hesitates to jump in. She used to love that guy. But that guy never asked questions when she got quiet. Never knocked. Never pushed past the polite, "I'm fine." He just filmed and laughed and edited the bloopers. I kept scrolling through our old videos late at night, watching her grow backwards. It's a strange form of grief to mourn someone who's alive and 15 feet away, brushing their teeth at the same time as you, just on the other side of the hallway. One of those nights, I saw a comment from someone else under our cookie argument skit. It said, "Your dad seems cool." I almost laughed, almost replied. Thought about typing something like, "He tries. He just sometimes forgets to be brave when it matters." But I didn't, because she turned off replies on all the old posts. She was done with that chapter, and I hadn't even realized we'd reached the end of it. The note. I almost left. It was a Tuesday night, the kind that didn't know if it wanted to be warm or cold. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, the TV playing some rerun of a show I used to love, but had stopped following somewhere in season 5. Characters I once cared about, now just moving wallpaper. Talia's door was cracked. Not wide open, not shut, just cracked. Enough that I could hear the rustle of pages and the occasional clearing of her throat. She was probably journaling something she picked up from her mom, I think. I used to tell her that writing was therapy with ink. She'd roll her eyes and say, "Everything's therapy with you." She wasn't wrong. That night, I opened the Notes app on my phone. And for reasons I still don't fully understand, I started typing a message to her. Not a text. Not something I'd send. Just a maybe note. A message I thought she might need someday. It started with, "I miss you. And I know that's my fault." I kept going. I wrote about pancakes, about the TikToks, about how I let the silence win too many times, about the way I pretended she was just growing up instead of growing away. I even wrote, "You used to fix my collar. Now I can't even meet your eyes." Too much, probably. But it was honest. And at midnight, honesty feels safer than it does in the light. I hovered over the print button. I had this weird fantasy of folding the note and sliding it under her door, like some teen drama dad moment, minus the violins. But I didn't do it, because something in me whispered, "Too little? Too late?" So I saved it. No title. Just a blank document sitting between grocery lists and half-finished passwords. I think I wanted her to find it someday. Maybe stumble across it on my laptop after I'm gone and think, "Oh, he did try. He just didn't know how." The next day, I overcompensated. I made waffles. Drove her to school with a playlist of her favorite artists. Even tried to say something funny about main character energy, but it came out awkward. Like I was trying too hard, which I was. She smiled, politely, said thanks, then stepped out of the car with her backpack slung low and her headphones already in. And I sat in traffic for 20 minutes, thinking, when did she stop hugging me goodbye? I used to get these quick, distracted squeezes, the kind where her arms barely wrapped around my sides, like she was already halfway back into her world. But still, they were something. Now just the door clicking shut. No wave, no look back. I started cataloging the losses in my head like I was doing inventory. The hug, the videos, the nicknames, the jokes, the smell of her favorite shampoo lingering in the hallway. Parenting, I'm learning, is a long list of things you didn't notice were ending until they'd already ended later that night. I heard her laughing on FaceTime. It was a light laugh, sharp, real, the kind I hadn't heard in a while. I pressed my ear gently to the wall. I know not proud of that, but I just wanted to hear her be happy. I just wanted to feel close to something I helped build. She told a story to whoever was on the other end about how my dad used to think TikTok was an energy drink. Her voice was warm, nostalgic, like she was talking about someone who'd moved away but still sent postcards. She didn't sound bitter, just detached. And that made it worse, because if she'd been angry, I could have worked with that. Anger means there's still a fire somewhere. But detachment, that's like watching embers die from across the room and realizing you never brought matches. I went downstairs and opened the fridge just to stand there. The light hummed. Something dripped from the freezer. I don't know why I didn't go back up and say something. Maybe because I was scared of her looking at me like I was an interruption, like I didn't belong in the new chapter she was writing. So I just closed the fridge, went back to my room, and opened that note again. Didn't change anything. Just read it, like it was written by someone braver than me, a stranger in her smile. It was the mall food court, of all places, where the realization really took root. We were there to get a new pair of sneakers, something she needed for gym class. The old ones had holes so big they whistled when she walked. I offered to take her, thinking maybe this was it, the bridge moment. You know, a chance to just exist next to her again, without all the static between us. She brought a friend. Not that she told me ahead of time. We pulled into the parking lot, and she said, "Oh, by the way, Erin's meeting us there. She needs shoes too," like she was commenting on the weather. I smiled, said cool, and told myself I wasn't being replaced, I was being shared. Inside, we peeled off toward the stores, and I followed a few paces behind like some weird unpaid bodyguard. Occasionally, they'd hold up shoes and look back at me like I was a mobile wallet, which, fair enough, I was a mobile wallet. They were laughing, whispering, filming each other, trying on ridiculous heels and pretending to model like runway queens. It was sweet. It was the kind of thing I used to be invited into. At one point, Erin pointed her phone at me and said, "Do a dad pose?" I raised my thumbs and grinned awkwardly, like someone impersonating themselves. They laughed, but not unkindly. And Talia said, "Classic. He's stuck in 2016. I nodded like it was funny. Like I hadn't spent the last 2 years trying to figure out which version of me was still safe to be. In the food court. She sat across from me, slurping some mango bubble tea while scrolling. I said, "Remember when we used to come here just to ride the escalators for no reason?" She looked up, blinked, and said, Sorta. I don't know why that word hit so hard. Maybe because it felt like she was filing me under miscellaneous. Like an old file she didn't want to delete but didn't need to open either. I picked at my fries, watched people go by. A kid dropped an ice cream cone and burst into tears. His dad tried to cheer him up by pretending to slip on the melted scoop. And the kid laughed through the sobs. I wanted to tell Talia that used to be us. That I once turned spilled spaghetti into a Broadway routine just to make her stop crying. That I once wore a tutu and sang "Let It Go Into a Spoon." But all I said was, "You liking school lately?" She shrugged. "It's fine. Fine. Sorta. Cool." Every answer was a closed door with a sign that said, "Do not disturb." After the mall, she asked if I could drop her off at Erin's. I nodded. Of course. Always yes. She hugged me goodbye. Quick, arms around one shoulder. One beat, maybe two. But I clung to it like it meant more than it did. In the rearview mirror. I watched her walk up the driveway, chatting, light on her feet, the way people are when they're fully themselves. And that's when it hit me. Her happiest moments didn't include me anymore. Not because I was bad, but because I had faded, quietly, softly, like wallpaper curling away from the corners of a room that had already been redecorated. That night, I sat on the porch with a beer I didn't want and thought about time. Not in the big, poetic sense, just in the what the hell happened kind of way. There were whole swaths of her life I had no access to anymore. Inside jokes I didn't get, songs she didn't share, apps I'd never heard of. I once knew her favorite crayon, for God's sake. Now I don't even know the name of her latest best friend. That's the thing they never tell you when you become a parent. How much of the job is grief? Little griefs. Daily funerals for the versions of your child you'll never get back. The toothless one who said Paschetti. The wobbly one who clung to your leg. The giggling one who asked if thunder was God burping. Gone. Not in a tragic way. Just in a quiet, unceremonious way. Like they slipped out the side door while you were doing the dishes. I still had her, but not like before. And maybe I never would again. My apology came too late. I had this plan. I'd take her to that breakfast place she used to love. The one with the syrup dispenser shaped like a chicken. She thought it was the height of comedy when she was 8. Said it looked like it was laying sugar eggs. I figured if I could get her laughing again, really laughing, maybe I could earn a crack in the wall between us. So I asked. She said she was busy. I offered another day. She shrugged and said, maybe. I knew what maybe meant. We've all used it. It's a pause that protects you from hurting someone more directly. A soft no. But I still went that Sunday. Sat in the corner booth alone, same as always, with the chicken syrup on my table, just staring at me like a judgmental mascot. I brought a book. Didn't open it. Watched a little girl feed her dad bits of pancake like he was a baby bird. He made big eyes and fake gobble noises, and she squealed with glee. It was too cute. I wanted to cry, and also tell him to savor it. Like really, really savor it, because one day he might be sitting where I was, remembering. I went home and did what all emotionally constipated dads do when they don't know how to fix something. I cleaned the garage for 6 hours. Found old boxes of her toys, dolls with tangled hair, stickers on plastic bins that said, "Keep out, Dad." A dried macaroni Valentine that looked like a tiny edible crime scene. I sat on a milk crate and just stared at this foam crown she made for me once, glittery and crooked, that said King of Dads. It broke me a little, not in a dramatic, sobbing way, just that tight throat. Sting in the eyes, kind of quiet unraveling. I held the crown like it was fragile, like it still meant something, like she might still mean it if I could only remind her who I used to be that night. I pulled up the note again, the one I almost gave her, and I printed it, folded it carefully, wrote her name on the outside in my neatest handwriting, the way I used to label her lunch bags. I stood outside her door, note in hand, for maybe 10 full minutes. Then I slid it under and went to bed. I couldn't sleep, kept listening, hoping I'd hear her pick it up, open it, say something, but nothing came. The next morning, the note was gone. I don't know if she read it. I don't even know if she kept it. I thought maybe, just maybe, there'd be a shift, a glance at breakfast, a longer goodbye. But no, she grabbed a banana, muttered bye, and left. It crushed me in this absurd, small way, like I'd pinned all this emotional weight onto one act of courage. And when it didn't do what I hoped, it collapsed on top of me. Later that week, I asked her if she got it. The note, I said, "Did you read it?" She didn't look up from her phone, just said, "Yeah, I waited." That was it. Just yeah, nothing more. I nodded like that was enough, went upstairs, closed the door, and sat there wondering if I'd ever feel brave enough to follow up. I didn't, because if she had something to say, she would have said it, right. And yet, deep down, I started to suspect the truth. I hadn't written it for her. Not really. I had written it for me, to feel like I tried, to say I said the thing, to stop carrying this guilt in the shape of her silence. But confessions don't work like that. They aren't receipts for forgiveness. They're just open palms. And sometimes, the other person doesn't take your hand. The birthday I missed without missing it. Her 17th birthday came and went like a light left on in the distance, barely visible through the fog between us. I wasn't not invited. But I wasn't exactly on the party planning committee either. She wanted something low-key, which in teenager speak apparently meant her friends, her playlist, and as few adults as legally allowed in the house. I offered to make her that cake she used to beg for, the one with 3 layers of chocolate and crushed Oreos in the frosting. She laughed. Dad, I haven't eaten Oreos since, like, middle school. Right. Of course, my mistake. I asked if she wanted anything special. She shrugged. Gift cards are fine. Fine. Always that word? I gave her a card anyway, handwritten. No joke inside this time. Just a note. Not a grand speech, just I'm proud of you. Always. Even when you don't see it. I left it on her dresser, next to the gift card for that makeup place I had to Google twice. That night, I stayed mostly out of sight, let her have the house. Ordered a pizza and camped out in the garage with a 6-pack and a folding chair. Listened to them play music I didn't recognize. Heard the door open and close 100 times. Caught flickers of her laugh through the window. And each time, it was like hearing a song you used to know. Now in a different key. She was beautiful. Not in the my daughter is pretty way though she was, but in that she's becoming someone entirely new kind of way. Her eyes had steadied, her humor was sharper. She carried herself like a person trying not to need anyone, especially not me. I didn't cry, I just sat there, sipping warm beer, watching the shadows on the walls as the party moved around the house like a living thing. Around 11, the kids left. I offered to help clean up. She said, "It's fine, I got it." I stood in the kitchen doorway and watched her quietly move cups into a trash bag. There was cake smeared on the counter, not mine. Store-bought, probably vanilla. "You sure?" I asked again. She didn't answer, just nodded, kept working. That's when I realized something I hadn't let myself feel fully before I was no longer central in her story. I was background. I was furniture. I was the nightlight that stayed on even when no one noticed. And still, I stayed up that night just in case. Just in case she needed help, or water, or forgot something in the car. She didn't. The next morning, there was a cup of coffee waiting for me on the kitchen counter. Black. No sugar the way I like it. No note, no explanation. Just the cup. I held it like it was sacred. Maybe it meant nothing. Or maybe it was her way of saying, "I see you. I know. We never talked about it, but I didn't need to." That one gesture a quiet cup left on the counter held more grace than any conversation we'd had in months. And it was enough to get me through the week. I started doing smaller things after that. Less pushing. Less trying to fix it. Just little things. A ride to school when she didn't ask. Fixing her door hinge so it wouldn't creak. Restocking the almond milk she liked, even though I hated the stuff. I didn't do it to earn her back. I did it to stay in orbit. Because sometimes, love looks like staying close enough that they can find you when they're ready. And I guess that's where I am now. Floating, present, silent, but steady. The quiet shift between us. A few weeks later, I was making spaghetti. The real kind, not the jar sauce, but the full labor of love version with garlic that clings to your clothes and onions that make you cry, even when you're not already on the verge. I hadn't made it in a while. She used to help me roll meatballs when she was little. Tiny hands patting them too flat and laughing when they crumbled. I didn't expect her to come down. She usually didn't, but she did. Quiet footsteps on the stairs. No phone in her hand. No earbuds. Just her, standing in the doorway with this blank look, like she'd walked in on something she half remembered from a dream. I didn't say anything, just stirred the sauce. Then she said, "It smells like when I was 7. My chest pulled tight, not painful, just dense. Yeah, I managed. It's your Nona's recipe. You used to sneak spoonfuls. She smiled a little, barely. But it was there, real. She leaned against the counter and watched me for a while, and I swear, it felt like standing in a room with a campfire, the kind where no one speaks for long stretches. But you feel warm anyway. I handed her a spoon. She tasted it, closed her eyes, then, without looking at me, said, "It's still good." I don't cry in front of her, never have. But that one nearly broke my streak. We didn't talk about big things that night, just normal stuff. Her chemistry test, a show she'd been watching, the cat's new obsession with the toaster. But the way she spoke, it was softer, less defense, more curiosity, like she was easing herself back into the space we used to share. We ate on the couch, no phones, plates balanced on knees like old times. And when she finished, she handed me her dish instead of leaving it in the sink, like usual. I said, "Thanks for hanging out." She shrugged, but then, without really thinking, said, "Yeah, it was nice. That was it. But for us, it was everything." Since then, it's been small moments. A shared YouTube video, her sending me a meme, me asking her opinion on a shirt before going to dinner with friends just to hear her snarky fashion critiques. We're not back to what we were. We never will be. But we're something. And that something is quiet and fragile and still a little new. But it's real. She still has walls. I still have regrets. But we're building something between them. A little bridge with every exchange. Every nod. Every, "Do you want some?" And I saved you one. And you know what? Maybe that's enough. Maybe healing doesn't always look like a full reunion. Maybe sometimes it's just the absence of tension, the ease of being in a room together and not feeling like a stranger. I still keep that foam crown in my sock drawer. Still look at it sometimes when she's out and the house is too quiet. It reminds me of who I was to her and who I still want to be if she'll let me. The house is mostly dark now. Just the soft hum of the fridge, the tick of the wall clock, and the leftover garlic still in the air like a fading memory. Outside, the street is quiet. Porch lights blink like fireflies. A car hums by, low and steady. Upstairs, I hear the creak of her floorboards. She's home. She's safe. She's here. That's enough for me tonight. I don't know if she'll ever tell me she forgives me. I don't know if she even thinks I need to be forgiven. But I've learned not to chase answers in the dark. Sometimes, being present is louder than any apology.